March 15th, 2018, and this is a special meeting of the Planning Commission. Mr. Bryant, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Guerrero?
Here.
Commissioner Kang has an excused absence this evening. Commissioner Keller?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Vice Chair Barrera?
Here.
And Chair Donaldson also has an excused absence this evening, so we have a bare quorum of 4 commissioners present.
Okay, thank you. One announcement, the study session for the 5850 Shell Mound Way project, which is item 6.1 on the agenda, will be continued to a future meeting. And at this time, I'd like to open up the meeting for public comments for anyone wishing to speak on an item that's not on the agenda. Oh, seeing none, we'll close the public comment and move on to the next item, which is disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. Are there any? None? Okay. So we'll move on to the public hearings. The first item is the Emery Go-Round Temporary Fleet Parking Use Permit. So we'll hear a staff presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this item is Emery Go-Round Fleet Parking at 4555 Horton Street. The applicant is the Emeryville Transportation Management Association, which runs the Emery Go-Round, and the owner is Novartis. They have a lot up on 67th Street, and the lease expires on April 15th. They are working on occupying a site within 2 years, but they're not ready to do that now. And the Novartis Rifkin site is the only one that they have been able to find now. And by the way, their vehicles are fueled and repaired off-site, and they're planning to, instead of moving their trailer with them, rent an office space on 65th Street, if that lease goes through. So what they're applying for is a 2-year conditional use permit that expires on April 15th, 2020, unless it's extended. They propose 26 Emery Go-Round shuttle vehicles parking spaces and 20 employee car spaces and 2 handicap car spaces and 2 covered employee bicycle parking spaces, which was added as a condition of approval. And the project site will be accessed from the north, from 53rd Street. So here's the project location. It takes up about 3/4 of the Rifkin lot to this, well, plus, yeah. And it will be accessed, you can see the access to from 53rd on just that little part of Horton Street, north of all the residential projects. This is what it looks like now. This is their existing conditions, and you can't really see very well, but it does show that there are some lights on the site, and there's 2 gates. The Emery Go-Round will only be using the north one, which is on the right. And this is what they want to do. So they're leaving the south part not used. There's their in and out at the gate. The buses will be in the middle and the cars on the sides. And that box, that square box, is that they want to have a 10-foot shed, which looks like this. And it's exempt from design review because it'll have negligible visual effect, especially since it's near the back of the lot. The hours of operation, people are there on weekdays from 5:15 to 10:45 and weekends from 7:30 to 10:30. And the daily trips to and from the site, weekday 70 shuttle vehicle trips and 38 car trips. Saturdays 22 shuttle vehicle trips and 12 car trips, and Sunday 14 shuttle trips and 8 car trips. They do some interesting things on site. They have to idle each vehicle for 5 minutes while they inspect and make sure everything works each morning. And the vehicles are washed on site with a very cool portable self-contained system, which brings in a tank of wash water and an inflatable tub to put the bus in, wash the bus, collect the water, take all the trash out of the bus, and take the wash water and the trash away and dispose of it properly somewhere else. The general plan and zoning for this project, the project use classification is major public services. The general plan land use for the site is mixed use with residential. The zoning district for the site is PUD 3, which is was originally Chiron, now Novartis. That PUD does not allow residential uses. The planning regulations allow major public services with a use permit in zoning districts that don't allow residential uses, except of course open space and utility zones. A short-term major public service is appropriate here because there are no residential uses here now, and the Sherwin-Williams units are not likely to be completed and occupied in the next 2 years. There are not many people on the site before and after the noise ordinance hours. There are 14 people who arrive before 7, and they're like 3 to 6 per hour arriving, and four that leave after 10 on weekdays, and then on Saturdays, 3 leave after 9. The nearest residence is the Artist Co-op, which is 173 feet to the south, and there are no other residences within 300 feet. There is a condition of approval that was based on and sort of reinforces the noise ordinance that they, before 7 a.m. on weekdays and before 8 a.m. on weekends and after 9 p.m. any day, except for idling each shuttle vehicle for up to 10 minutes each day for inspection, there shall be no idling, washing, or repair of shuttle vehicles or loud yelling or amplified sound. And the reason washing is underlined is because I found out about it after the staff report went out. So that's news to you tonight. In terms of traffic, the proposed use would generate less traffic than cars parking on this lot if it were in use as a parking lot. The Emery go-round will generate 108 trips per day, and the parking lot has 367 spaces, so clearly it would have a lot more traffic if it were in use. And there is a condition of approval that all the vehicles will enter and exit at the north gate, and that will make sure that none of the Emery go-round shuttle vehicles or employee cars will pass by residential uses to get, at least not immediately next to their access to the site. In terms of parking and site standards, for major public use, the planning director has to decide what the parking demand is, and since they have 19 employees that access the site on a given weekday, he said, well, it should be 19. And since they're providing 20 spaces, that complies. And the parking space design complies with the dimensional standards, and landscaping and screening is not required because the proposal is to reuse the existing parking lot, and they're not expanding. There's a chain link fence there now, and that is allowed if the director determines that it's appropriate for the use, which he has. So in terms of to grant this conditional use permit, you'll need to make some findings. The first one is that the proposed use is consistent with general plan goals and policies. The general plan goal it's consistent with is that calls for a safe, effective, comprehensive, and integrated transit system. And then there's a policy that existing public transit to BART, Amtrak, and regional destinations will be supported, and transit within Emeryville for residents, workers, and visitors will be promoted. And then this other one is about the Emery go-round. The city will continue to support free and/or subsidized transit for both local travel in the city and travel to the regional hubs located at the Amtrak station, MacArthur BART, and San Pablo 40th. The second finding is that the characteristics of the proposed use are compatible with the neighborhood. As a 2-year use, this is compatible because there are not any residential uses there now, and it's similar to the existing parking lot, and we have a condition of approval and the noise ordinance which prohibit noise before 7 and after 9. The third finding is the proposed use is compatible with utilities and emergency response systems, and it is because it's not going to use water or generate wastewater, and it won't burden the fire department and police department more than a car parking lot would. The fourth finding is the proposed use contributes to the general well-being of the community, and it does because it will help the Emery go-round shuttle to continue operating. The shuttle moves 5,500 people a day for free to and from BART and stops throughout Emeryville. And the proposed use complies with the planning regulations as I talked about before. We took this to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and they had 2 requests which we made into conditions of approval. One is bicycle parking for employees, which we decided that they should, based on the planning regs, that it should be 2 covered bicycle parking places, and that could be in the shed. And they also asked for a class on sharing the road with cyclists, and it turns out we have that scheduled for March 31st as part of the regular operator safety meeting. The Staff Development Coordinating Committee reviewed it, and they didn't have any comments that affected the planning approval. They only said that before a building permit is issued, they need to refine their handicap space dimension and configuration so that it includes a van space and a path of travel that goes to the street without going behind other spaces. So they can do that in the building permit process. And we received public comments from Sharon Wilshire of the Artist Co-op, and I put her email on the dais because I didn't think to email it to you earlier. And she said her questions are answered and she supports the project. And then we also heard from Jack Chizzoni, who's also here, and he sent his email to you, so you got that. And he raised the same questions plus another one. And I got an email this afternoon that he felt they were answered. But he'll probably speak a minute. But I wanted to respond to the questions anyway. The hours of operation are in the project description, 5:15 to 10:45, 7:30 to 10:30. The idling is in the noise discussion and the condition of approval, except for the morning inspections, no idling outside the noise ordinance hours. Food trucks, I'm kind of curious why that came up, but I'm guessing there are some food trucks on 67th Street, but they're not there because of the Emery go-round. Those people aren't there very much. And people wanted a phone number for noise issues, which the ATMA has given to both of them, and it's on the Emery go-round website, their operations office. And their email is also, you can email them from the website. And the other one was about teaching the drivers about sharing the bicycle boulevard with cyclists, and that is covered by the workshop that Bike East Bay is going to conduct on March 31st. In terms of CEQA, we have 3 exemptions: minor alterations to land because they're only restriping the lot, infill development because it's surrounded by existing or approved uses, and the general rule we're certain there's no effect on the environment because there's less traffic than the parking lot would have, and the shuttle vehicles are fueled and repaired off-site, and the noise hour limits would prevent noise impacts to the nearest residential building. So, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the proposed 2-year conditional use permit for the Emery go-round temporary fleet parking at 4555 Horton Street, that's the Novartis Ripken lot, to expire on April 15th, 2020, unless extended by the Planning Commission. And that's the end of my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And then we have Tim Bacon. Yes. We have Tim Bacon here, and he'll probably introduce Ronnie Hattrop, who runs the Emery go-round. Tim Bacon is the chair of the board, and then probably Sharon and Jack will speak. Any questions for me first? Okay.
Good evening. I'm wearing my Emery go-round board hat tonight, not my public market hat. I'm here as the chair of the board of the ETMA, which provides a service for the Emery go-round, which for residents and businesses in the Emeryville area is a tremendous service, and one that we all take very seriously. The long-term viability of the ETMA really depends on having close-in parking for the shuttles to the city. Ronnie can speak to this in a little bit more detail. We've been working for a long time and continue to work on more permanent solutions, including a Caltrans site underneath the freeway just on the Oakland border. Those efforts continue. We can speak to those if you're interested. But while we continue to work through that process, we were given notice, as I believe Diana mentioned, that the lease that we had with LBA was going to be terminated at the end of, or the middle of April. So we spent a lot of time trying to find a suitable alternative for the interim while we worked out more permanent solutions. One of our board members is with Novartis, and he was able to help us wade through the issues involved with a large company like that, helping us out. And they've really been great to work with and have quickly moved on getting us agreements and everything that we need to work this out. So we're very happy, and I think they'll be a great partner. We've similarly had conversations with some of the stakeholders in the area, and everyone seems to be on board. We're hopeful that this will meet with your approval. We think it's obviously a great way to continue the service in a meaningful and less impactful way that an offsite shuttle parking area would dictate. And Ronnie again can speak to those details. But we're happy to answer any questions that you might have, and hope that this meets with your approval. Any questions for me?
I have a couple. You indicated that the Caltrans site is not secured yet, so that is not a known fact that this is a done deal?
That's right. Ronnie can speak to those details. The Caltrans process has been one that we've been working on for, I'd say, at least 18 months in conjunction with the City of Oakland. We've met with city council members in Oakland and a lot of their city staff to try and cooperate on ways that we can secure that site.
What's the general consensus?
I think they would love to have us have that site. There are obviously resident concerns about that in West Oakland, which we think we can resolve. And there are ways that we're thinking about how we can work with some of the Sherwin-Williams conditions of approval for shuttle service and things like that, because one of the things that Oakland wants is shuttle service down Mandela through to West Oakland. So, there are a lot of, I think, creative cooperative measures that both the ETMA, the City of Emeryville, the City of Oakland, and some of the landlords and developers in the area can work together to try and resolve that.
So the other question I have is I'm going to verbalize a concern, but it has a question around it. But I live at Pacific Park Plaza. I've been here 17 years, and 90% of the time I've lived here, without exaggeration, I've been in a construction zone. I don't mind that. I'm not complaining that, but I've been watching an apartment building that has been taking forever to build. They have not even up to the 5th story yet, and it's been years. And I've seen other apartments building get done. So I'm concerned that you have this two-year window and that you don't have the space secured yet. Does the ETMA really feel that this window is realistic, or should we be granting you a 3-year thing and that you vacate sooner?
Well, I'll answer that question in 2 parts. 3, and I'll update you on Avalon Bay's progress after that. Reading between the lines of your question. I will say that the license that we have been presented by Novartis is 2 years. I am doubtful that they would provide us with more time, simply because it's not, I wouldn't say impossible, but I think that obviously they want to maintain their flexibility on the site. If at the end of 2 years we said, hey, we need more time, could you give it to us? I'm hopeful that they would be open to that. Ronnie can speak to the timeline on Caltrans. I know that it's moved a lot further than it had a year ago. I believe we met with Councilwoman McElhaney last September about moving it forward. Caltrans has a process which can take some time, but I'll let Ronnie, I'll introduce Ronnie at this point. Ronnie Hattrip is with Graybo and Scott. They are the executive directors of the ETMA. And she's been handling the project for many, many years and has also been leading our efforts on Caltrans negotiations. So I'll bring her up now to answer those specific questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
Ronnie, you want to come on?
Good evening. So with regards to the timing on the Caltrans site, 2 years is rather optimistic. We'll begin setting our schedule as soon as we get over this hurdle of our temporary short-term site. We'll work on really identifying the next steps in terms of the schedule. So as far as we've gotten with Caltrans, they seem to be very approved of our use of the site and encouraged. We provide a transportation use, which they support. And we have already developed our conceptual site plan. So the next step would be to go to them and their C2C, because it would be a long-term lease, a 30-year lease. So that's our next step. And once we get through that hurdle, which is about a 3-month process, we'll have a more defined path forward with the Caltrans schedule. It's just a construction of a site, so it's not like we're building structures on it. We're going to be putting a modular office and a parking, resurfacing of a parking lot. So I don't anticipate the construction improvements to be too invasive, but the timing is always a question. So we've set ourselves 2 years. We're setting ourselves a goal for 2 years, and hopefully we can navigate this quickly.
That's all my questions. Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
So I have a couple questions about the training that you're going to be providing for the staff to share the streets with bicyclists, since that was something that came up in the BPAC meeting. Can you explain what type of training was provided for Emery Go Round staff before this request?
So we haven't had a specific bike safety. Well, actually, I shouldn't speak to this. Our operator conducts their own safety, meetings. So they've got regular agenda items that they cover with their safety department. So I would have to have them come forward with what bike safety specific measures they've taken with their drivers.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great idea, having this Bike East Bay, is that what it is, come out and do a presentation. Mm-hmm. And I think it'll be a good thing for them to revisit bike safety. Park
Great.
Plaza.
In anticipation for the Sherwin-Williams project, and seeing all the construction that's happening at the public market, there are a lot of cement trucks that come in and out of that area. And so I'm wondering if you are planning ahead for that while you have buses that are going through that street, and then coordinating with the building that's going to be happening there.
So I'm imagining, we're on 67th Street right now, and there's quite a bit of traffic that goes in and out of there, and we have to navigate that with, car vehicles, quite a bit. There's constant construction equipment going back and forth on 67th Street that we have to navigate daily. So I don't anticipate it being a problem for them. We really don't have a lot of ins and outs, given the course of time that we operate. The 70 trips, access points in and out, spread over the day, kind of give us, it's not like you're going to have an influx of buses that, so they would just have to navigate the construction, equipment, materials, like they would, today on 67th Street.
Thank you.
Does that answer?
Yes.
And I'll also mention, one of the conditions was that we use 53rd Street to access the site. Not speaking for the Sherwin-Williams folks, but my sense is that they would probably, and they may have conditions that require how they access the site too, but it's possible that they would not be using the same routes, or if they were staging concrete trucks, they would be coming up from the south. And so it's entirely possible that there wouldn't be too many conflicts there. I think having all the bus traffic, the shuttle traffic going to the north and then east on 53rd, I think that will help. It's kind of driving it away from the Sherwin-Williams site as opposed to taking it down and kind of by the site, even though they're adjacent. That would be my sense anyway.
Thank you.
Any questions, Commissioner Thompson?
I had a question about the 10-minute inspections in the morning. How many do you have to inspect in the morning?
So in the morning, we have a total of 16 vehicles that exit the bus yard between the period of 5:15 and 7. So it would be about the 16 vehicles at their given times of inspection.
But if I could just chime in, I believe it's 5 minutes and roughly, and we gave 10 minutes in the conditions of approval just to have a little bit of wiggle room.
Okay. No, thanks for the clarity.
Can I ask a question?
Right.
Do they do that all at the same time? Like if they all start at 5:30, do they all kind of
Not
turn?
typically. So there might be some that are paired together, particularly when we have two routes starting the same time. But they'll be staggered throughout the morning period. And we will have them minimize their idling time as much as possible. So maybe conducting their inspections in a more efficient way to reduce that idling time.
Yeah, no, I think anything you can do to minimize it would be
Absolutely.
beneficial. And then the shed, is it principally holding bikes, or are there other things that will be in the shed?
The shed will hold like bus stop sign equipment that we have. We have some tracking devices, signage, those types of things. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Route guides.
I have a question for staff. If they get close to the 2-year period and find that they need more time, would they be able to extend their use permit or add some more time to this existing use permit by coming back to us?
Yes, they can request that from the Planning Commission.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, if there are no more questions, I will open the public hearing for comments from the public. So if anybody wishes to speak, please come on up. You have 3 minutes.
Sharon Wilshire, Community Liaison for the 45th Street Artists Cooperative. And I just felt that as representing my community, before the staff report came out, I had gotten some information and did have some questions. We've been in Emeryville for 45 years, so we've seen a lot of changes to the mixed-use area that we're in. And we have almost 60 studios and a little over 80 residents. So I would say that noise and street parking are some of our, bigger issues, and I know that, all of that is going to change even more in the future. But after sort of the 9 to 5 mixed use activity is going on, that's usually actually really quiet in the neighborhood. So I was concerned about what time the drivers actually arrive and what time do they actually leave, even though that was stated what the hours of operation are. And I've had a great response from Diana in terms of answering the questions that she could, and also conversations with Ronnie about this. So I understand that that's it. Those are the hours. They're not coming earlier than that or leaving later. And then wanted to be sure that all the drivers would be parking on the Novartis lot, and the answer was yes to that. And I didn't know, now I understand from Ronnie, I wondered about, food trucks, because sometimes that comes to a site where there are people, there for in a group, and she just mentioned that really isn't something that they've ever had an issue with. The drivers are there to begin their shift, and then they're out on the road, so that's not an issue either. And then I had included no idling of vehicles, but I understand the requirements and the length of that, etc. And also a phone number in case there are some issues, and we've been provided with a phone number and also with an email for that. So I think that those were the obvious concerns, and I believe they've all been I've answered adequately. One thing I did want to mention, and that was that I found out just maybe last week that PG&E has been doing work on Hollis Street with trenching and et cetera, and that this summer they are planning on working on Horton Street for the gas line that's there, and I just thought it would be important also for you all to know about that and to find out exactly what that entails, and will it interrupt your route or anything like that. So okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, Tim Curran from 4250 Horton Street. So I suppose this has been run by Alta Traffic Planning, who's gone to great efforts to put in the temporary traffic calming measures on the bicycle boulevard, and this won't interfere with that, and it will mesh well with their updated plans to, I guess, make the traffic calming measures permanent. So I suppose they've done that, and if they haven't, it very much needs to be done. There are a lot of bottlenecks now happening right on that area because of the traffic calming measures, and I wouldn't want to see the situation worsened. So I am concerned also about the direction of travel and to and from the parking lot, and I trust that they will, the drivers will kind of obey the directive to travel north onto 53rd Street and not travel south through the neighborhoods. And lastly, it is, I suppose, the shuttles are diesel powered, and state of California has listed diesel as a listed carcinogen, and we're going to have a lot of heavy vehicles in the area, so it's just another load that the local community is going to have to bear up with, and I suppose we will be doing that. I just wanted to mention that as you notice all the things that are happening in the area.
Thank you. Come on up.
I just wanted to mention one thing, because that's a good point. I can't speak to the traffic calming or anything like that, but we have a system on our buses for real-time tracking through a company called Synchromatics. If there are drivers that are not following the condition of approval to use 53rd Street and using 49th Street, we'd be able to see that. And we'd be able to know the route, the time the bus was leaving, and we'd be able to take appropriate action with the operator.
Excellent, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? No? Okay, so I will close the public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
I'm just happy they found a space. I mean, to get such notice to move such a big facility, that had to be pretty hairy to try to figure out. And it's not ideal, but I think, for our little city of 1.2 square miles to have a place that's this ideal, I think we're pretty lucky. Of course, living in a city is never convenient for everybody. There are transit and pollution problems. We don't live in the country. We live in a very intensely packed city. Emeryville is one of the things that we work on to fix that, so we don't have so many cars on the road. So I think in looking at lessers of evils, this is certainly a good way out. I just hope that we can get a permanent place secured so we're not scrambling again in 2 years for a temporary location. So good luck with that. And if we as community members could do something with Caltrans, write letters, call somebody, get this on fast track, let us know. And we can definitely push our elected officials to kind of move things along because we know how they can stall. Thank you.
Okay, so as a multimodal commuter here in the city, I also use Emery Go-Round, so I appreciate that we're getting close to a solution here to find where we can park the buses. So I'm also happy that we're getting close to that. I'm happy to see that there was such a fast turnaround with the training for Emery Go-Round drivers to train them how to share their streets with bicyclists and pedestrians. I'd encourage Emery Go-Round to find a way to implement that so it becomes an annual training or maybe some part of the onboarding process, because I do notice that there are a lot of new drivers consistently. And so if this can be implemented as part of your training where it happens more regularly, I'd feel a lot safer there on the streets as a bicyclist. But thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Emery Go-Round is a great service for the community, so it is great to be able to find a location for it. I think you're doing the right thing in terms of making sure there is an avenue for people to call if there are noise issues, in terms of minimizing the impacts as much as you can. I think I agree that the exit and entrance, which is primarily a commercial area, that's appropriate. So I think it's a good solution, and I think I second also the idea that you get a more permanent location, and hopefully that will go through.
I just echo my fellow commissioners' comments and appreciate your willingness to, have all of these conditions of approval, and I wish you folks luck in your negotiations with the other site. So hopefully we don't have to come back over here to extend your use permit. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as...
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Keller and seconded by Commissioner Guerrero to approve the application. Commissioner Guerrero?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Barrera?
Aye.
4 ayes. The application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Sherwin-Williams PUD amendment. And we're going to get a presentation from Maru.
Good evening, Commission. So it's Sherwin-Williams again. You thought that you were done with it, but this is not. This is not the last of it. We still have one more FTP to go. But we did approve a PUD and a PDP about 2 years ago, and we've approved the subdivision map, and we've approved the FTP for the new buildings as well as park and open space. So as this moves forward, the conditions of approval start getting implemented. And one of the conditions of approval of the PUD was the list of community benefits that the project needs to obtain in order to get their development bonuses. And this was the list of the goodies, the community benefits that we are going to be getting from Sherwin-Williams project. And the first three, which are under the flexible community benefits, are bunch of things that will be done, and then in the second portion of it is the public improvements, and the first on that list is the issue today. This is regarding undergrounding of overhead utilities on Horton Street. So where you see number 2, that is what we are talking about. So as the public works staff and applicants start getting ready to draw up the street improvement plans, one of the issues that we are looking at is that in order for undergrounding of utilities to occur between Park Avenue and 46th Street, which is this entire corridor, trenching needs to be done. And PG&E does not allow joint trench boxes in the roadway, and due to the utility congestion under the roadway, the conduits will also need to be routed to the sidewalk. So the question is, which sidewalk, the east or the west? And so there are trees on both the sides. On the west side, there are 11 trees, and the valuation is about $32,000. And on the east side, there are about 30 trees, and the valuation is much higher at about $82,000. The trenching work will jeopardize and compromise the health of the existing trees, and it is likely that all or most of the trees may need to be replaced. So given this situation, and because the sidewalk on the west side will be reconstructed as part of the project, and whereas a portion of the sidewalk along the east side is relatively new, Public Works staff recommends that the joint trench work for utility and undergrounding occur on the west side, which would remove the existing 11 trees and replace them with new trees in better soil conditions. So I'm going to walk you through some of the pictures of, these were pictures taken, I think, last week. We are looking south on Horton, and so the trees we are talking on the east side are these, and on the west side are these. And as we move forward, so again, on the east side, and these are on the west side, and I'll get you closer. So you can see that there's a canopy of trees on the east side, and you have some not that healthy looking trees on the west side. This is the state of the sidewalk on the west side, which will be reconstructed as part of the project. And this is the state of the sidewalk on the east side. And moving further south on the east side, this is the state of the sidewalk. And there are some nice big trees as well along here. And this is the final leg, and this is between Sherwin Avenue and Park. On the east side again, this was, as you can see, the sidewalk was recently constructed or reconstructed, and is according to our standards, Park Avenue Design Guideline standards.
Maru, can I go back to that real quick? Just to clarify what I was, so the utilities running above this are the utilities that will go underground?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a page from the PUD packet, and this is the approved PUD set, and it indicates that the trees along Horton, highlighted in green, are the existing trees, and these existing trees were to remain. These blue ones are the new trees, and they were there to fill the gap between the tree line. And this is the reason why an amendment to the PUD is needed. And so in your resolution, what we are recommending is that this amended page look and provide that all the trees along the Horton side on the west side are new trees. So in terms of our recommendation, we are recommending that the Commission recommend that the Council modify the Sherwin-Williams PUD by replacing the existing landscape plan that I just showed you of the approved plan set with the new landscape plan that shows new trees along west side of Horton Street. It needs to go to the Council because the PUD, City Council were the last decision-making body of the PUD. However, the Commission, in addition to recommending this to the Council, the Commission also needs to approve the tree removal permit for the 11th Street trees on the west side of the Horton Street, contingent, of course, upon the Council approval of the PUD and the PDP amendment. We are recommending that the Commission waive the requirement to pay the replacement value fee because of the following reasons. One is that the removal of trees is indirectly warranted due to a condition of approval requiring undergrounding of utilities as part of their bonus points. The project will also provide new trees in better soil conditions that will allow trees to thrive. And it will allow preservation of the 30 larger and healthy trees on the east side of Horton Street. So that concludes my presentation. We do have Public Works staff here, the Public Works Director, as well as a Senior Civil Engineer, to answer any questions regarding, what does trenching involve or things like that, and why they are recommending this in the first place. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer. There are no other presentations other than this.
Any questions?
Maru, could you go back to a photograph of the trees more on the west side? Yeah, like up one more. Yeah, like there. So we're looking at two different canopies here. We're looking at the west side, which is very green, and the east side, and the west side, which is not. But are the trees on the west side deciduous?
They are, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So,
obviously. Yeah.
So, and So I just want to make sure that that isn't a sign of unhealthy trees, that because the ones on one side have it. But according to the city arborist, these are less healthy than the trees on the east, correct?
That is correct. And the valuation is an indicator of the health of the tree.
Okay.
And the city arborist has recommended all along that these trees are better replaced. And,
I remember that, and I supported that during that period as well. But I just wanted to make sure that when we're looking at pictures, this kind of makes it look like the trees are just really sick. But just to make sure we're all looking at what's real there. They are less healthy trees, but this image is not the sign of that they're really, really unhealthy.
Right. But, there are some big trees as well on the east side, and they're just a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Trees.
Yeah, I walked this last weekend, and actually John tripped and almost fell on this walkway because that sidewalk's in such bad condition. But we're going to Target, but I particularly walked this way so I could look at the trees one side compared to the other, and that just wanted to make sure that I was sensing what I was. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have one question about the replacement trees. What size will they be when they come in, and is there a sense of how quickly they grow?
Well, they will be the standard 24-inch box, and the rootable soil volumes, given this, which is related to the size of the tree at maturity. So I would not know, in terms of how many years will it take for it to achieve this size. But just to give you an example of how they do better in rootable soil, if you see the trees along 40th Street in front of H-Song, and you compare that with trees either to the north or the south, which are older trees, planted much earlier, you can clearly see that the ones that were planted with rootable soil are doing so much better and are almost the same size of the older trees. And that H-Song project is about 8 years. But, it's apples and, the tree species is different, but there's enough evidence to show that the better soils can do better for the trees.
Maru, I have a question. I'm curious about the time frame for this work. How long will the trenching and undergrounding take, and when is it scheduled to start?
And I'm going to refer that to one of the public works staff.
Hi. So we're expecting groundbreaking to occur on the existing building there to occur in December of this year. When the undergrounding of Horton occurs could be probably about 6 months after the start of that. So we're looking at summer 2019, and it's probably a 4-month process to underground all those lines.
Pretty good.
I have a follow-up question while he's here. Are we coordinating this work with the other work PG&E is going to be doing on the street? So maybe it could all happen at once, so we're not tearing up the street, then 3 months later tearing it up again?
So you're referring to the gas line work?
Yeah.
The gas line work will actually move pretty quickly.
Okay.
I don't know.
Probably sooner?
Yeah, it's already permitted,
Started,
so
yeah.
it's going to occur in the next couple months. And
Okay, wishful thinking.
It should move a lot quicker than the undergrounding of the wires. Yeah.
Thanks.
One other question. What happens to the trees that you remove?
They become wood chips? No.
The removed trees, well, they can't be.
Yeah, can you speak in the microphone, please?
They won't be transplanted.
They won't be transplanted. You
No.
just take them somewhere to actually get...
They get turned into mulch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, if there are no more questions from the commission, I will open the public hearing for comments. If anybody is wishing to speak, please step forward. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jack Gitzoni, co-chair Park and resident at 1500 Park Avenue. And we just wanted to say that we support the staff report's plan. We feel like nobody really likes to see trees go. However, this is we want the utilities undergrounded. It's a sidewalk that's in disrepair, and the smaller number of trees that also happen to be unhealthy and are eventually going to need replacement are all there. So it's kind of a good synchronicity of things, and hopefully we'll be able to have a better sidewalk, undergrounded utilities, and healthier trees. So we support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tim Curran, 4250 Horton Street. I look out over those trees every day. And the city council unanimously didn't approve the removal of the trees during the PDP. They voted to retain the trees. It wasn't over the same issue, but it was over the desire to keep the integrity of the neighborhood and work with what we have and work with the life that is there and that the city has established, being the trees. And so I want you to be aware of that. The other thing is that I don't know if Public Works has any intentions of, I'll back up. DTSC has established soil testing under the sidewalk in the street of that area. Site number HS49 shows 660 milligrams per kilogram of arsenic still in the soil, as per a map that was put in the 5-year plan a couple of months ago. So that was in with the 3 to 10 foot depth range. There was no contaminants from the 0 to 3 foot range. So the tree removal and the trenching is going to expose more lead and arsenic contamination in the area, and the testing has been inadequate. It's spotty because of the type of contamination historically from Sherwin-Williams. You can have a hot spot in one place from a dumped wheelbarrow or something, and then the next test shows a clean soil. So I'm expecting to have the street ripped up and to have to work with DTSC on this. And I don't have any confidence of Public Works with the way they've handled things in the past regarding mitigation of dust migration and whatnot. They do the standard thing, guy on a hose, but I'd like to see further efforts made, such as tenting of hot spots and regarding this extensive unearthing of an ongoing brownfield. While we've on-site completely remediated the soils there, you'll find that the testing shows that there are areas of contaminated soil down Sherwin. Hubbard has a couple of juicy hot spots, and I'd like to be sure that the migration of lead and arsenic isn't exacerbated or as bad as it could be. In the past, it's been problematic, even though DTSC has put their mitigation efforts in place.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, seeing no one else, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the commission. Anyone like to start us off?
I'm kind of glad to see that we're going to make changes in those, because I think it's going to be a more uniform street when it's done. I think the opportunity to dig up these trees and maybe some of the contaminated soil is a good thing to bring in more healthy soil. I don't know what our options are if we don't do this. Do we not underground utilities? I mean, that is not a win-sum to me, and keep trees that are far less healthy than what we could have in 10 years' time. So I think doing nothing is a no-win-sum, and doing something is a win with maybe some extra work involved and some careful planning and some extra work, but I think this is the way to go.
I also agree. This public safety is a huge concern of mine. The sidewalk isn't safe as is to walk on for anybody. However, another element of safety is the local residents and their health. And so I'm actually interested in learning how the contaminants are going to be measured during the construction. And like what the residents can do to protect themselves from those contaminants. I remember the public market when the old theater was being torn down, and there was tons of dust in our garage, like almost 2 blocks away. Inside the garage, so it was a covered garage. So I'm thinking about all those airborne contaminants and concerned about that. So that's more of a question for city staff, like what do we do to mitigate that and protect the residents?
Can Public Works come speak to that, please? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Andrew Clow, the Acting Director of Public Works. I hear the concern loud and clear. I can't speak to exactly how it's been handled in the past, but they will have to adhere to the soil management plan, which is part of the DTSC remediation approvals which had occurred. It is possible there'll be some contaminants in the soil. We'll work with the contractor as part of that oversight. I don't know what more I can say. Dust control measures will have to be in place, and we'll have to monitor it closely. I don't know what other specifics you'd like at this time.
Are there any measurements that happen during the construction to measure air quality while the construction is happening?
There will have to be some air monitoring. At this point, I can't tell you exactly what that is. I haven't looked through in detail the soil management plans. I'm quite familiar with them. I worked on the remediation of the Army base in Oakland. That's what I did, is run environmental programs in Oakland before one of my earlier jobs. So I'm well aware of it. I just at this point have not read through the remediation, the soil management plan, and what they'll be doing on site. But dust control for heavy metals and these types of contaminants that remain on the site. There's also a lot in the groundwater, but that's at depth, and that's all handled with slurry walls, et cetera, that are in place. So they'll have to have a water management plan as well during construction. But the primary method would be dust control, and that's what's important, as the other gentleman mentioned, is adequate dust control, actually keeping it down, not just somebody with a hose.
So how is the dust controlled?
It's usually as simple as that. It's water. You keep the dust down by wetting the surface. You keep the soils from being tracked off the site. You clean the wheels of the trucks before they leave the site. All of that will be required as part of their management plan on site. If it is worse than that, at times you can use a surfactant, which will also be sprayed, mixed in with the water and sprayed, which helps bind some of the dust down and hold it down more tightly. I'm not sure exactly what will need to be required, and we'll be watching that.
Thank you. Are there any
Thank you.
questions?
No, I just a comment about I too agree. I think the replacement of the unhealthy trees, and I think the discussion that we've had about the health of the trees is pertinent to this, because I do think that as much as you try and retain tall trees, mature trees, if they're not healthy, you're not retaining that much. And the idea that you could have a tree, even though it's small to begin with, but might grow faster, might be more robust and have a longer lifespan, I think that's a benefit to the community.
I think that this is a pretty positive thing that's happening here to underground these utilities, and I understand that the reasoning for this was because that Public Works has found that we can't have the undergrounding in the street, which kind of leaves us to decide, which side of the sidewalk, and it seems pretty obvious that this would be the right location to do that because of the condition of the sidewalk and condition of the trees. So I support this PUD amendment.
I have one more comment. I really enjoyed the comprehensive list that you put together, Maru, that included the public improvements that were planned for this project. This is the first time I'm seeing it presented like this, and it was really easy for me to understand and follow, and so I just wanted to point out that I really enjoyed that piece of the report because it connected back to a lot of feedback that we're hearing from some other committees.
Thank you. All right, well, I would like to make a motion to approve the Sherwin-Williams PUD amendment.
I'd second it.
All right, moved by Vice Chair Barrera and seconded by Commissioner Keller. On the motion, Commissioner Guerrero?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Barrera?
Aye.
4 ayes. The resolution is approved. We will forward your recommendation to the City Council. I believe we have that scheduled for the April 17th council meeting. This will be an ordinance, of course, because PUDs are always done by ordinance. and PUD amendments are also done by ordinance. So the first reading will be April 17th, and then the second reading would be May 1st, whatever the next meeting after April 17th is. And then it would take effect 30 days after that, assuming the council approves it.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, we will move on to commissioner comments. Are there any commissioner comments at this time?
I have one comment about the construction that's happening at 65th or 64th in Christie, the public market, the AC Transit stop there. Yesterday, I witnessed a neighbor of mine from Park Plaza who is a wheelchair user trying to get on the bus there, and that loading zone didn't really promote him being able to load on the bus. And so just wanted to point out that the construction site there, it doesn't feel as though it's ADA compliant, and he actually had to wait for a couple buses that would actually pull up to a space that you could aboard the bus. And so the sidewalk there on Christie on the like I want to say right before you get into the park area. Mm-hmm. That bus stop feels really challenging for wheelchair users and also pedestrians. So hoping that we can address that before the project is complete.
All right, I'll pass that along to the Public Works Director.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to second that, and also because the 57 lays over there, it makes coming out of 64th Street very dangerous. There's a crosswalk there, and then there's also a corner without a crosswalk, but people use that as well. But cars exiting off the 64th Street onto Christie they have to bring their nose out into the street before they can see around the buses because they're so close to the street. So I think I'd like to see us talk with AC Transit about doing some relocation, because the 29 goes there, the 36 is there, and the 57 is there, and that sidewalk's not 3 feet between the curb and the fence. That's the construction fence.
I believe, if I may, that this is temporary while the park is under construction.
Right.
And that after the park is finished, that the sidewalks will be redone, and the bus stop I don't know if it's going to be relocated, but I'm sure it will be improved.
Right. But the problem is currently, and they haven't worked in the park for 3 weeks, so I don't know how long this park is going to be like this. A temporary situation can tend to be years of temporary situations. And if it's not meeting the needs, especially people in wheelchairs, and in PPP, we have at least 5 people in wheelchairs that are active on their own and do use the bus. There's a young woman that takes the bus every day to work, and she's in a wheelchair, and she uses the 57. So this isn't just ancillary, use. It's just it's daily use. Mm. So I'm glad I've seen that, but I didn't even think to bring it up. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? All right, so the meeting is adjourned.